Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We're here again at Chico Bocello in Canonsburg, our home away from home, and we're joined today by a good friend of mine and somebody that we've been trying to get together on the show for months, and we finally were able to get schedules coordinated. But Jeff Hancher, one of the good guys around this part of the world. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Man, it's a long time coming. It's a pleasure.
It has been.
We were just talking offline about Like Hearts Connect, and it's so good to be a part of the show. And
absolutely
love what you're doing for the community as well. Adding a lot of value, a lot of deposits.
Likewise,
that's what it's all about.
I put that right back to you. And you're a local guy, as am I. And you know, I'm a decade or two ahead of you, but still, we come from a lot of the same place. You know, in Washington County, southwestern Pennsylvania in particular, and we both have had kind of, I would say, not the normal journey to get where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, because I didn't, I've been in the engineering business for 40 years, but I didn't, high school, college, I skipped some critical steps in the middle of that. Mm-hmm. And I've had to work, do a little bit of extra work, a little more elbow grease to get where I'm at. Right. And you can relate to that from, where you come from in your journey.
Yeah. And I think the good thing about that, not that, would I have done it differently? There's surely things I would have done differently, but I think whenever you're able to find a level of success, which I think is our obligation, because not only is it good for us, but there are people watching us and we're giving them belief of what's possible.
Right.
And so that's a motivator for me. That's a driver for me.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a young Jeff Hancher out there that's maybe thinking the future is bleak. And I'm here to put everybody on notice. Like, there are better days ahead and it's possible for anybody. And I love that you're doing that. And obviously it's my life's mission as well.
Absolutely. And, neither one of us came, from a silver spoon situation, right? We've had to work to get where we are. And I think that's such a powerful message, particularly nowadays when there are so many options available to young people. Mm-hmm. When I was coming out of high school in the 70s, you can count them on your fingers, right? There wasn't a whole lot of choices. But today there are so many, it's gone the other direction. Yeah. There are so many choices, so many options that it's even more confusing and daunting to a young person in that situation.
It is. This is the time of year too, speaking of young people, that I do a lot of communication around what's next and the journey. I feel like now more than ever, whether it's a high school graduate, but especially college graduates, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I belong. I don't know what the next step is, because there is so much noise out there and there's so much pressure. Right. And man, there's some practical advice out there. Live in the moment, be great at what you're doing, because being great at what you're doing usually opens the door to the next thing. Right. Sometimes we look so far into the future that we lose sight of what's happening right now. Yes. What unlocks the next door is being great at what you do now, and go all in on that, whatever that is, because it'll propel you to the next thing.
That's exactly right. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, to the point where you're not gonna get rich at 18 years old, 19 years old, right? Unless you have some, it's very rare. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Yes. I'm sorry, there's just not.
But everybody wants that, especially now in the day of social media and YouTube sensations. It's like, well, that's just what I'm going to do. The journey to success is all uphill.
Absolutely.
And you got to be willing to make the climb and do the right things. And I think a big part of that is getting around people who have been where you want to go. There's something about this mentoring piece that, it's transformed my life for sure.
Huge. Likewise.
And that's some advice for anybody, but especially for young people.
Oh, absolutely. And that journey is never linear either.
No.
It's never a straight line. No. There's a lot of stops and starts and detours and wrong turns and things like that. And I've made more than my share. Yeah. And, paying it forward. Right. If I didn't have those mentors in my life, I have one in particular, my friend Marvin. He's actually been on the show, and Marvin, he always gets nervous whenever I say that. Right. He's like, oh, what do you, but if it wasn't for him leading by example, because he's not a rah guy that's going to go out and you do this, do that. He's just that guy that goes out and does the very best that he can at what he's doing right there in that moment. Sure. So not only does that propel you opens the next door and propels you to what's next, it also shows those coming behind you that are watching you the path.
What's possible.
Right.
Yeah, I am the hallmark child of anything's possible. I started very humble beginnings in poverty. I find myself in the military. I think I'm going to go to Cal U on the GI Bill, and I'm going to be the first one to get a college degree.
Sure.
And mom gets sick. I end up trying to find a seasonal job just to help make ends meet, help my parents out. I start as a truck driver at a large company, and little did I know I'd spend the next 24 and a half years of my life there, uneducated, blue-collar worker that climbs through the ranks. Sure. And I'd love to tell you, like, well, I'm awesome, and that's why it all happened. I'm not awesome. I am like the furthest thing from awesome.
What's the opposite of awesome?
Yeah, whatever that is, that was me.
Yeah, sure.
But I will say, like, the journey of success, you know, we've heard the saying, success leaves a trail. And it's absolutely true. There are formulas for success, and they're boundaryless to industry or trade or whatever it might be. And if you can get these formulas right and you're willing to put in the work, anything, literally anything is possible.
I agree. And I think that's the step that that intimidates a lot of people, putting in the work. That step, you know, because
it's a non-negotiable.
It really is. It really is. It's a, you know, I got into school as an afterthought, right? I've been in the engineering industry for 40 years. I'm not an engineer, you know, but I've been able to build a career in an industry where I am literally never have been, never will be the smartest guy in the room. Right. And my father, I was raised by teachers, right? My father was a public school teacher. And the one thing he always said when I started this career, and I kind of got trapped in it, right? It's not what I wanted to do. It's not, you know, what I intended, just like yourself. But one day I woke up and I was, you know, 12 years and 3 kids into this life that I didn't choose.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, that's what he said to me. He said, you'll never be the smartest guy in the room, but there's absolutely no reason you can't be the hardest worker, and you should be.
And you know, the great thing about hard work is it's not a skill.
Right.
It's a choice. It's an effort.
It's a choice.
You know, I get the question a lot, I'm sure that you do as well, is, you know, what's the secret to success? How do I go about building wealth? And there's novels of books written on it. But at the end of the day, wealth and success is built on value. And value is built on knowledge.
Sure.
Getting that knowledge is the hard work. And I tell people all the time, in this life, you're going to be in one of 4 camps. And camp 1 is, I hope it doesn't come up. Camp 2 is, if it comes up, I'll wing it. Camp 3 is, if it comes up, I'm ready to talk about it. But then there's these Camp 4 people. And these Camp 4 people are people that say, if it doesn't come up, I'm bringing it up.
Right.
And why would you do that? Not out of arrogance, but because you have something that the world doesn't have.
Right.
And now you're compelled to give it to them.
You have something to offer.
If we know CPR and somebody goes down on the floor, we're not waiting. We're going to it. Why?
Yes.
Because we have an answer to a problem that maybe nobody else in this facility does. So now I'm obligated to go to the problem and solve the problem. But getting to Camp 4 is a lot of work. And it's a matter of saying, am I willing to give up what I want now for what I want most? Like, we know what you want most, but what are you willing to give to get? And that's really where the chasm needs to be crossed, in my opinion, most times.
I think you're absolutely right, because when I think back about the things that were important to me 25, 30 years ago, okay, and the things that I was pursuing and what I thought, title, salary, all these different things, I worked crazy hard because I knew the guy next to me was more equipped. He was better at this than me. He was smarter because he had the education and all those things I didn't have. But I worked hard and I got there. And when I got there, I thought, what did I think this was going to be?
Yeah.
Not this, not what it is. You know, so I think that clarity, whenever you're starting out, that clarity really it's a critical piece to be able to sit and look ahead and say, okay, I want to get there, but I'm going to keep my eyes open on the way.
Yeah, because this corporate ladder, it's a myth.
Sure.
It's a jungle gym. It's not a ladder.
That's exactly right.
A ladder is straight up. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And every time you get comfortable in what you're doing, success means that you're probably going to take a step back again because you're on a new learning curve.
Right.
And I saw that my entire career. And here I think I have life all figured out and business all figured out. And I branch off to start my own company. And here comes the old friend imposter syndrome and the, all of these things that come back that you got to fight off and say, no, okay, the mission's bigger than me. How do I serve people? You know, where can I add value? This always happens, but if you're too comfortable too long, you're probably not progressing.
Right.
It's this healthy discomfort.
Yep.
I call it the pressure. And pressure and stress are different.
Two different things.
Man, but if you can live in this pressure that creates tension, you're probably tracking the right way.
Yeah, and you're going to avoid stress by putting yourself in pressure situations.
Yes.
Because you're controlling that pressure piece.
Yes.
Right? It's not being thrust. I look at stress as something that's an outside in influence.
Yes.
Whereas pressure is inside out.
Yes.
Right?
Man,
so
that's so good.
I'm going to test myself.
Yes.
I know I can do this, so I'm going to go do it.
Yes.
Rather than I think I can do it, and then all of a sudden Jeff's going to come along and say, "You need to do this."
No question.
That's stress.
I have found like I hate to use the word addiction, but this pressure almost becomes that to where it's like if you're not feeling it, I got to find it because I know that it is one of the key pieces to moving forward. I interviewed a Navy SEAL commander, and he was talking about this point. And he said he remembers the first time when they were deployed to Afghanistan, the very first call to action. And he said, here we are. It's a helicopter mission. Everybody's up in the middle of the night. We're all in the helicopters. The propellers are going and we're ready to go. We're amped up. We've been training for years for this.
Right.
We're feeling this pressure. And then all of a sudden the mission was called off.
Right.
And he said, we were sitting in there devastated. He said, but think about this. Think about what we were going to do.
Right.
We were going to do some catastrophic things.
Right.
And you would think that a normal human would say, wow, we just dodged a bullet. We don't have to do this all of a sudden.
Right.
He said, but that's not how anybody was feeling. He said, everybody was devastated because we didn't get to go do what we were built to do.
Right.
And man, I think there is something to this.
I agree.
It's this saying of, you know, a battleship is very comfortable in the harbor, but it's not built for the harbor.
Right.
It's built for battle.
Right.
And this is the pressure we got to go chase to propel us into what we're called to be, which is it's potential, right? We're chasing potential, not numbers, not left, right, but what is our potential and what does that look like? Let's go create that pressure to go chase it.
I agree. I 100%. You know, what in my career, I started out, I've held just about every job in the engineering business, right? Much like you, started out as a truck driver. I started out as a draftsman. Okay, on a board. This was way before CAD. You know, Jeff, I'm an old dude, man. I was like, you know, it was like with a ruling pen, with ink, you know, and just had an opportunity. And I made a good living, and I would have, if I'd have done that for for 40 years, I'd be making a good living. Not what I'm doing now, but I would be making a good living and I'd be comfortable, right? But I would be bored to tears. I would be, if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out, right? But when the opportunity was presented to me to get into marketing and business development and that client retention and client management piece, I had no clue. I'd never done anything like that before, right? But that was going to be a pressure situation. I'm thinking, I first thought stress, right? Because stress is, oh my God, that's stressful. But once I said, oh, you know what I got to lose? I got a family. I got to do these things. If I can do a little bit better for them, you know. So I dove into it, and I found out a skill that I had that I never dreamed that I had.
Yeah.
Right. I never saw that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the beauty of opening new doors and being good at what you're doing now.
Right.
Faith with the little, ruler over much.
Right.
And it's like, don't focus on running the kingdom. Get good at being a soldier, right? Or whatever the analogy might be. But I think that's exactly what you're saying is like, who knew that this was going to be a gifting that I had, and it was buried in there the whole time. But had I not got to that place, that door would have never opened up, and I would have never known.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee you, there are people either watching or listening to this show, and you have potential that's buried deep. And you haven't even uncovered it yet. And it might be a matter of getting to the next phase.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's not about winning life. It's about winning the day.
Winning the day.
And if I can win this day, I'm going to compound the wins.
You know, I've always looked at, you know, when I was young, and I alluded to this, I looked at success dramatically differently than I do now, right? At 63 versus 33, okay? I was in that moment. I was chasing it. I was chasing salary. I was chasing title, all those things. And I wasn't happy, you know, so I had to sit and really think and evaluate what happiness means, right? What success means, what, you know, and when I looked, I finally put those two words together. Okay. So when I wake up in the morning, and I blogged about this today, when I wake up in the morning and I'm happy, when I wake up happy, my heart is light and I'm happy, that's a good day. Yeah. I've had a successful day. Yeah. I've already had a win today because I woke up happy.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm prepared for anything that comes my way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge win. That to me now is the definition of success. If I'm happy doing what I do.
Yes.
Okay. So all those years I was chasing that salary and that title. I mean, I had a good job, but I was miserable. I wasn't happy doing it.
Same.
You know, now I look forward to going to work every day.
Man, me too. And I think the word that could define what you just said well is fulfillment.
Yes.
Because when I transitioned from this Fortune 500 company in 2019, people thought I was out of my mind.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you go from truck driver to senior leader at a Fortune 500 company, you grow up in poverty, and now you have a level of success, and you're going to throw all this behind? Well, I mean, let's be honest. I thought I was crazy too. Like, I thought I was losing my mind.
And like, what am I doing?
But it came down to that one word, which was fulfillment, meaning I'm not going to be 85 years old and look back and regret not doing what I feel that I'm called to do. We've all heard the saying, like, the two most important days, the day you're born, the day you realize why. What I do right now is why I believe I've been put on the earth. Not that I'm God's gift to the earth by any stretch.
No, you're exactly right.
But I want to do my part.
Right.
I want to do my part in this big plan. And now I get to do something that I get excited about. I loved my job, make no mistake about it. Loved the company, thought I was going to retire from there. But this level of fulfillment. And so my advice to anybody listening is don't chase wealth or money. Chase fulfillment. And go after how you can serve.
And the money will come.
Man, it will.
The money will find you.
It's a magnet at that point.
The money will find you. And you know, and I love that. I love that saying because I can tell you right now, beyond any shadow of a doubt, unequivocally, January 6, 1960. That's the day I was born. October 10th, 1997. That's the day. I can even tell you it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the day I knew why.
Wow.
Right. And that's when I started the journey to where I am today.
Wow.
To being fulfilled.
Yeah.
Right. And it took, listen, there was a lot of stuff.
Oh, man.
in between.
Oh, man.
Right? There was a lot of stuff. That, you know, but see, I adopted that mindset that you said, if I make it to 85, God willing, I want to be able to say, I really regret kind of that I probably shouldn't have done that one.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I regret. I wish I would have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, so if you're going to have a regret, and everybody does.
Yeah.
Right? Let it be over something you did, not something you didn't do.
Man, there could be books. I mean, that's a whole book in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Like, Absolutely. This is this fear of failure versus the fear of regret.
Right.
This fear of failure thing holds so many people back.
Mm-hmm.
The what if it doesn't work? What if I'm not valuable? What if? Failure is a bruise. It's not a tattoo.
That's exactly right.
Failure is going to teach you something. This is the old, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Right.
But I promise you this, if you have a life of regret, there's no getting that back.
That's exactly right.
It's better to try and fail and learn and pivot than to be later in your life and realize that you lost a lot of years.
Yes.
The best time to start is right now, whatever that might be to the listener.
Yeah.
You can fill in those blanks, but man, regret is something you just don't get back. And we know this. You know, if you're listening, you've lived long enough to have a level of regret. None of us have done it perfectly.
Everybody does.
And man, regret is something that you really got to work hard to get past. So let's minimize it as much as we can.
Yeah. You know, there's another great saying, and you and I could throw quotes out all day long, but the very best time to start, you remember this, the very best time to start was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The second best time to start is right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
It's true.
I mean, and it's very true. And, you know, when I think about all the times that I saw the path, but I didn't take the step because I was afraid to take that step because, you know, I was afraid to fail. I was afraid of what people would think, how it would be perceived, you know, and all those things that those are basically, those are thoughts from youth, right? But experience takes you in a different direction.
It's true. You know, for me, it's a lot of imposter syndrome.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a lot of poverty mentality. you know, I could go buy the juice store possibly, but I'm sitting there figuring out how many ounces are in the bottle and what's the better deal. And like, you got to fight these demons off.
Right.
Whether it's a poverty mentality or it's imposter syndrome. I'm uneducated, never went back, never got my degree.
Absolutely.
Like, who am I to think like I should ever start a company or be a corporate executive? Like,
exactly right.
Who says not, right?
Yeah.
So I work through those things as well. And imposter syndrome is a very real thing that we 100%. All have to work through at 100%. Some point, some level.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm a senior vice president in a several $100 million a year company. No business being there. On paper, I have no business being in that role. Absolutely none. But when you throw the paper away and you look at what I bring to the table and what I've done and the experience I have, that's where the value is.
Well, and how many people in your life and in your path, they've looked on your life and said, it is possible.
Oh, yeah. If he can do it, I can do it.
He just proved that it's possible. This is the 4-minute mile, right?
That's exactly right.
Nobody's ever done it before until they did it.
Yeah.
And now the whole world believes it's possible. So now everybody's going to run a 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
And inevitably, your life is you're a 4-minute mile runner, and you're telling other people, man, this is what can happen. That's why it's so important, I believe, that we all chase our potential, because there are people watching and saying, like, what does that look like? And let's never make it about us. Like, it's about the people that we can serve, and it's about the people we can influence. And that's the best gift in the world.
Absolutely. You know, my kids, my stepkids, all took a very different path through life than I did. My 3 children are all college graduates. Okay. My stepkids, my youngest is in the Air Force. He went into the military. So they took a very different path than me. And I always tried, I never told them do this, do that, do the other thing. I always tried to set an example so they could see exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's different. You know, I was very different when my kids are older. My oldest, I have 2 at 40 right now, so over 40. So a long time ago, I was a different person.
Sure.
Right. So the message that I was sending at that point to those kids was different than the message now, say, to my grandkids or to my adult children.
Life doesn't stand still.
Doesn't stand still. You know, my dad always said, you know, big education guy, right? Big public school teacher, big proponent of public education. But he always said, you're never going to learn what you need to learn in a classroom. Knowledge is a moving target. It's out there. You got to go chase it.
Yes.
Right. That's what I did.
I always tell people, especially young people, and I'm an advocate of education.
Sure.
I wish I had my degree, all of that, right? But
absolutely.
I tell young people all the time, go get educated and get over it.
Yeah.
Like, go do it. I'm a fan. Go do it. But then get over it, because they're not going to teach you things that you're going to need to know most.
No.
And there's so many missing pieces in education as it relates to success and business and all of that. Like, you got to go chase that down. You know, this communication piece, the mentoring piece, conflict resolution. Sometimes the best way to learn is to touch the stove, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And just get in there and navigate the journey.
Yeah. Because, you know, the communication piece, if you are not a good communicator, a good writer, a good speaker, a good listener, I don't care how smart you are, you're not going to succeed.
I agree.
You are not going to succeed. You know, the engineering business is a great example in my mind. When a young person graduates from the University of Pittsburgh with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, they're not an engineer. And the scary part of it is they believe they are.
Right.
You know, that engineering degree tells me that they know how to learn.
Yeah.
And they have a lot to learn.
Or they know how to pass tests.
Right.
Maybe not even learn.
Right. And they're not taught the communication piece. Right.
It's true.
I mean, that's something to be an effective communicator, right? You've had that inside you. You may have had to pull that out, like I did. You know, it's always been there. I didn't know until I was almost 40 that I had that ability.
Yeah.
But it's always been there. Nobody taught me how to do that.
And it transcends industry. Or job assignment,
right?
You know, the communication piece, the emotional intelligence piece, how to understand the room, how to navigate conflict, how to handle adversity.
Sure.
Like, you can read the book all day long, but reading a book about the author is Tiger Woods about how to play golf well doesn't make you a good golfer.
That's exactly right.
It makes you a good reader, but not a good golfer. Like, the best thing to do is to go play 18 holes with Tiger, watch him do it, have him give you feedback doing it, do it wrong a lot, and have the best coach in the game telling you where you went wrong.
Yeah.
Like the book alone is not going to make you a great golfer.
Not at all.
You got to go out and execute.
And the follow-up to that is Tiger Woods could loan you his clubs and you're still going to go out there and hit it in the woods.
Exactly.
Right? You're not going to be, it doesn't matter, so it's like, watch and learn. And, it's so fundamental. And listen, when we were young, we didn't get it either.
Right.
So young people today, I mean, it's not an indictment against anybody. No. It's not an indictment against the education system or kids or anything like that. I don't buy into that, today's kids are different. Well, of course they are. Yeah. Right? Of course they are.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at...
And so were we.
So were we. I had it so much better at 16 than my father did, 20 years before. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And my kids had it a lot better than I did, and my grandkids have it a lot better than them.
Absolutely.
But that's what you want.
Man, it is.
That's what we should hope for. That's what we should be building.
It's true. And I will tell you, it's a good segue into why I do what I do now. Because I think back to my early 20s, mid 20s, even early 30s. And I reflect back and I think about like, what was the difference in the journey? Like, why me? I had no business having any level of success in sales, leadership.
Right.
And as I look back, there's a common thread. And the common thread is I had great leaders around me. I had great mentors around me. And now I get to live every day of my life trying to help other people fill that gap.
Yep.
There were people that filled those gaps for me. They saw something in me. They were able to draw it out. And that's the whole heart behind what I do.
Who was the first person that saw that? Who was the first person that saw Jeff Hancher and said, this guy can do this?
Man, I hope he's listening. His name is Joe Sable. He was my service manager and gave me a shot to be a fill-in truck driver.
There you go.
And we developed such a good relationship. And he would coach me. He would jump on the truck, teach me. He was a very caring servant leader. He's a Mon Valley guy, by the way.
I know the name.
Yeah,
I know Joe the name. Sable. I'm pretty sure I know him.
And then another one that stands out was my first sales manager, Sean Coyne. I had no business being in sales. I just thought being outgoing and charismatic was what sales was. And I got punched right in the mouth, realizing it's a lot more than that. And this guy would just spend hours on end role playing in the conference room, riding shotgun in the car, observing the meetings, having the tough conversations. And the sad thing is, James, is that so many people in life don't get that.
Right.
I'm so thankful.
You're blessed.
Man,
You're blessed.
like
Absolutely.
I don't know if my life would be what it is today.
Sure.
And so I'm on this relentless mission to fill that gap for as many people as I can, whether it's podcasting or training or workshops or coaching or whatever we can do to fill those gaps for other people to also help them reach their fullest potential. And that's what I want my legacy to be. I don't need a statue out front in front of the library. I just want people to be glad I was here and that I could make a change in their life.
Sure.
Because so many did it for me.
Absolutely. If you can impact one person, one person, and that person impacts somebody, I mean, because of you, I mean, you're doing your job. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
And just like this podcast, when we started this, I said to Nick, I said, I don't care if we have one viewer, as long as it's that one person that needs to hear what we have to say.
It could be life-changing.
If there's one person out there that needs to listen to me and you, to the two of us, we only get one view to this episode. We've both done our job.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
It's like always look at the people that are moving towards you. That's who you're serving.
Right.
It's not the social media likes and the comments, and it's about who can you serve. And I remember launching our podcast in early 2019, thinking, who in the world would ever want to hear me talk? Like, who would ever? But it's like you start getting the comments coming in, and you're like, wow. This is adding value back to fulfillment.
Sure. Right.
That's the whole thing. The small thing of starting a podcast launched me into building a company. Yeah. And that's what we do now. So back to taking the small steps,
that's exactly right?
But I agree. It's absolutely adding value. And you don't have to be the owner of the company or the chief executive officer.
No, not at all.
Everybody has a role. I remember the story when President Kennedy was visiting NASA. And this was the race to the moon, right?
Sure.
And he's doing a tour of NASA because they're preparing for an upcoming launch and all of this stuff. And he's walking through and he sees a janitor. And he walks up and he says, hey, I wanted to introduce myself. My name's Jack Kennedy. Not the president, my name's Jack Kennedy.
Sure.
What's your name and what do you do here? And the guy tells him his name and he said, I'm responsible to make sure that we get a man on the moon. A janitor.
That's exactly right.
Somebody in that building, there was a leader that said, what you do matters.
Right. Yep.
And what you do is important. And this guy believed it so much that he wasn't just sweeping floors.
Right.
He was a part of a team that was going to put the man on the moon. And whether it's a podcast team or a leader that's listening and you're building a team,
sure,
I want to be a part of that as well.
Absolutely.
I don't need the spotlight or the statue, but I want to be a part of as many people's lives to say, let's do this thing together and let me fill any gaps that I have that I can fill for you. And I think that's the mission. And nobody's excused from that. We can all play a part.
That's exactly right. This podcast in particular has my name on it, and that's it. I probably have the least important role on this team, all right? I mean, the podcast doesn't happen without Nick. Nobody knows about the podcast without Kelly Frost, without Melissa Migliaro, all the people on this team.
Yeah.
Alex, you know, when he's with us, okay, when he can be here and he can be with us and working with Nick, it's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
The show's different when Alex is here. Now, you know, people don't know who Alex is. He's, you know, he helps Nick set up. He does this, does that, does the little things, right? But the show is different when Alex is with us.
Yeah.
So it's a great team. It's a team that we cultivated for specific reasons, but it might be my name on the marquee, but I have the least important role out of this whole operation.
Man, I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
Without good people around you.
Takes a village.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why I love leadership so much, because so many people get the title or the opportunity to lead a team and they just don't do it well. And it's not because they're not trying hard. It's because nobody's ever really showed them. Yeah. And having like even that simple understanding of it's not about me and I'm such a small part of this. Yeah. Man, there's a lot wrapped up in that we can learn from as leaders, especially.
Well, you have to try, you know, and I have sought out. The reason I've been blessed with great leaders in my life is because I have sought them out. I have looked for them.
Yeah.
I have looked at people who are in positions of authority, which doesn't make you a leader, right?
Right.
So I look for certain things in whether it's a boss, whether it's a manager, or whatever, in that role, somebody that is going to lead me. I look for certain things, okay? The last thing I pay any attention to is a title.
Man, it's so true. Man, there are miles between earned authority and appointed authority.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking for a great mentor that's a leader, go look for somebody that has earned authority. You know, not a C in their title. Now, look, if you have a C in your title, you can earn authority there too.
Sure.
But I agree with you. Like, don't chase the big titles. Chase the people that have big influence.
Right.
I always tell leaders, don't be a leader that people report to. Become a leader that people don't want to let down.
Sure.
Man, that hits different.
Absolutely.
Like, if you're listening, you know, you could think of 3 people right now in your life that have led you in some way, shape, or form that you just didn't want to let them down.
Sure.
Your effort for that leader is endless. It's not compliance driven, it's engagement driven.
Right.
And I think that's a big piece in the leadership journey is how do I get to a place that I earn authority versus use appointed authority?
Right. Listen, I have that right now with Diane Altland, who is Nick's mother, who's a dear friend of mine. She got a job with GPI. She's an executive vice president, right? She is the branch manager. She runs Western Pennsylvania. This is a big company. It's a very, very stressful, pressure-driven position, right? She is ultimately and unequivocally the boss. She brought me in knowing that the task ahead of her, she couldn't do without me. Right? Knowing my skill set, knowing who I was and my experience, she knew that she needed to bring me in. But she also knew that by bringing me in, my role was going to overshadow her. Okay, but she was confident enough in her ability and her leadership, and again, deferring while still being a leader, right? So when Diane and I are in a room together, I dramatically overshadow Diane simply because of our personalities. But there's not any doubt that she's the boss because of that confidence that she has, that she presents.
That's amazing.
Right? So that's the perfect example
of
what you're saying.
That is a great example. Right? That's when the leader says the mission's bigger than me.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't care who wins, as long as we're moving forward with the mission. I don't need the credit.
Right.
I don't need the highlight. I don't need the attaboy. I don't need the high five. I just want the mission. That's and whether exactly it's right. you or you, it's going to be a collaboration.
Yeah.
And the most confident leaders, they're absolutely fine with that.
Absolutely.
Because the mission is bigger than they are.
The mission is bigger. That's exactly right. If you're not working for something bigger than yourself, you have the wrong job.
Yeah.
You have the wrong job. You know, it goes back to fulfillment. You know, you can be happy. You can be happy making a good salary, you know, living in a nice house, driving a nice car, but you will never be fulfilled until you are out on a mission towards something bigger than you.
It's so true. You know, we heard this from Simon Sinek when he said people will work for their what, but they'll die for their why.
Absolutely.
And we all know this because we all have that thing that charges us, that gets us juiced up, that thing that you said, man, I wish I could find a way to do this for a living.
Yeah.
It's probably that thing.
That's the thing.
That's the
thing. That's the why.
Yeah.
Right? That's the why. And, you know, to this day, 40 years into a career, I still go back very often to October 10th, 1997. Right? That's more important to me than January 6th, 1960, because that's the day I saw and I discovered the path to fulfillment, which went through happiness, which hard work was paid with hard work, went through happiness to fulfillment. Yeah. So October 10th, 1997 is the most important day probably in my life to this point. And my children aside, my anniversary and all that stuff aside, personal development wise, you know what I mean? That's the day.
It is.
Right? That's the day.
That's a good day.
That's a good day. And I quietly celebrate that every year.
Yeah.
I have ever since. You know, that's a day where I take and I reflect. I reflect on the journey, on where I've been and the milestones along the way. And it also gives me a check as to if I'm still on point.
Yeah.
Am I still going in that direction to that purpose that got me started on this path in the first place?
Yeah. Because right? I mean, look, it is a journey.
Absolutely.
And you constantly reflecting, how am I doing on the journey?
Yeah.
Where's the detours? Where's the potholes? You know, all these different things.
Sure.
This journey to success is one pivot after the next.
How many alleyways have you turned down and thought, whoop, wait a minute, nope, I got to go back.
Oh my gosh.
You know, you just don't know.
You don't know.
Right?
You don't know. But I think you do get to this place, back to creating this pressure, that it's like, if it's not there, I go looking for it. Sure. I need that feeling. And the newness of the thing. Because if you stay in one season too long, the world's passing you up.
Right.
Like whether it's technology or all life moves so fast. And that's why you can't rest on any success. You've got to be looking forward to the next thing. You've got to be willing to push the envelope. You got to be willing to create a little bit of discomfort and a little bit of pressure, because it's usually in those moments. Nothing good comes from a comfort zone is absolutely true. It's like the second that you rest and you're like, okay, we've arrived. You know, we got to have this spirit of positive discontent that says, I'm not as good as I could be. Right. It's like we heist up the Lombardi trophy. We just won the Super Bowl. And the next morning we're watching tape to figure out how we could have won better. Right. Or how we're going to win again next year.
How do we do it again? Right.
Yeah. So celebrate the wins, but not too long. Like, what's next? What's the next thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't get into that mindset, because then the people around you, it becomes, what have you done for me lately?
Yes.
So
it's so true.
How many people? So who won the Super Bowl last year? You got to think for a minute, right? That's a great analogy. It's a great point, because who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago? Who won Super Bowl 83? You can't think of that. It's gone. No. It's gone. I know the Steelers have won 6 Super Bowls, but I couldn't tell you which ones.
You're right.
I don't know. So that mindset that there's always better out there for you, not more, but better.
Man, that's a good point.
That's the confusion, right? Because I always, one of my mentors, Bruce Fletcher, always said, better isn't better. More isn't better, better is better. right? So you can get more, you can have more money, you can have more things, right? But that doesn't make life better.
That's so true. It is so true. I think looking at what drives you, where your fulfillment comes from, and where you can add value. I have a lot of coffees and lunch meetings around what should I do? Where should I go? And you're picking apart people's skills and their desires. I would tell you the thing to chase most is the desire and what fulfills you. You'll figure that out. Now, it's got to be within reason. My son wanted to be an NBA basketball player. I mean, he's 6'6".
Is that right?
He worked hard, but the reality is like that's not for everybody.
Sure.
And at some point, you got to say, all right, then what is that thing? So I'm not saying just go chase what fulfills you because you enjoy it. Because if so, we'd both be in the NBA, and
absolutely.
So there's a level of realistic. One of the best books that I've read, and I recommend to people who are trying to figure it out or figure out what's the pivot, is Strengths Finders.
Sure. Yes.
Man,
yes,
it's such a. I actually did this with my family, so that we could learn each other's strengths, understand each other a little bit more.
That's interesting.
But man, I mean, 2 college kids. They're thinking about, all right, where do I gear my efforts towards?
Yeah.
Because once you have that figured out and then you start putting effort towards it, it opens up a lot of doors.
Absolutely. Do you do a lot of one-on-one coaching? Because I know you go out and you're in corporate and you're giving trainings and things like that. Do you do a lot of one-on-one kind of?
When I launched from corporate, I did a ton of one-on-one executive coaching. I do less of it now because it is very time consuming.
Sure.
And so my mission now is to try to get in front of more people at smaller increments of time. So try to get a couple hundred people in a room over an hour versus a one-on-one. So the short answer is I still do executive coaching, but very, very relative to the candidate. That is looking for it. Very selective because one, I want to make sure that it's a fit. Sure, and that I can serve them the best, but also that it makes sense for the mutual benefit. So I still do it, but not as much as I used to.
Okay. So getting toward the end of our time here, so being conscious of your schedule.
Sure.
How do people find out more about Jeff Hancher? What's your website?
JeffHancher.com. It's that easy.
Wow.
It's Hancher.
You're creative like me. Yeah.
That's it. It's Hancher like Jolly Rancher, but it's with an H.
Okay.
So it's easy to find, and everything that we do is on the website, from the podcast to training to coaching to groups, all the stuff.
And you're on social media. I see you do that very well. Do you do that yourself, or do you have somebody that helps you curate those?
I get that question a lot, and Nick's gonna probably be mortified when I say this. I do all of my social media myself. Okay. I should be outsourcing it. I know that. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. I need to outsource that, but to date, I've done all my social media. I've had some people like Brad and some of our producers that will give me video clips.
Sure.
But I do almost all my social media myself. I figured out Canva and the whole thing. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I when I asked Kelly Frost, our mutual friend, to help me with that, her first comment was, "Okay, your social made my eye twitch." So I said, well, that just tells me that you need to help me out here.
I'm in the same boat. We did just make a hire that is coming on to help with the brand and different things like that. So it's not my sweet spot by any means. But hey, back to hey, get ready.
Whatever it takes.
Sometimes you got to roll your sleeves up and make it happen, right?
Whatever it takes.
So let's
You're
go.
Exactly right. Well, listen, any closing thoughts?
Man, I just want to thank you for the opportunity in the space and what you're doing for this amazing community.
Thank you for coming. I mean, it's just...
And I just want to challenge the listener too. Whether you're in leadership or you're pursuing success, there's resources for you. There's a team of people, especially in this community, that want to see people win genuinely.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are genuine people out there, and no sales pitch from me at all. But if I can ever add value to any of your listeners or of course you, I'm about it. I'm about iron sharpening iron and helping each other win. I think we're better together. And whether it's a workshop or a podcast or a keynote, however I can serve,
absolutely,
I'd love the opportunity to do it.
There's opportunity out there for you and I, my friend. We're going to do some good things together.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being here.
Great being with you as well.
JeffHancher.com. Look for him on social media. He's all over. He's not hard to find. Thank you, man.
Thank you, James.
Appreciate you.
Be well.